Okay. Hi there, George.
Hello.
Do I have your permission to record this Skype interview?
Yes, you have my permission to record this Skype interview.
Thank you. Also, do I have your consent to upload this interview onto a website? The website will have a password and will be viewable by my graduate studies associates and other interviewees.
Yes, you have my permission, consent to do whatever you need to do.
Okay. So, as you know, I'm doing my final project at Northern Arizona University in a Master of Arts with a focus on rhetorical writing and digital media. I chose an interdisciplinary focus on my project, the study of the documentary Cowspiracy, its effectiveness as a model for behavior change toward environmental sustainability and as a media literacy tool. We've been chatting for a little bit about that, and you are a fellow colleague in my program, so I really appreciate your participation today. Are you ready to start the questions?
Yes, I'm excited.
Okay. Number one, tell me about yourself.
Well, about myself, I like long walks on the beach. No, I am also a graduate student at NAU.
Mm-hmm.
For the last 15 years, I've been teaching in a community college writing center. When I'm not teaching, I'm raising or raised two kids. I love to garden. In fact, I was gardening this morning. I love to be outdoors. I'm passionate about helping people. I think that is my role on this earth is to help people, and I'm really happy with teaching, and that's why I'm in this program too, because my goals are to teach community college English, all levels, from beginning English to advanced English.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would like to do is really help people be critical thinkers and not really say what's right or wrong, but to really give students tools to think and to make sound decisions to be a better human being. And I know that might sound cliche, but that's what I'm about.
Great. And you watched this film that we're going to talk about. When did you watch it?
Actually, my oldest daughter is 20 years old. She has been a vegan for, I don't know, a couple years now, and she actually came over one day, and her and I normally watch documentaries. She goes, "Hey, Dad, I want you to watch this documentary with me," and I was blown away about the video in a sense of how what I was blown away was how major environmental groups wanted to turn a blind eye to the impact animal agriculture has on the planet.
Yeah, key point right there. So that was my second question. What did you think of the documentary? So that was one point. Was there anything else?
Well, I think definitely from my understanding of the modes of persuasion, as I was watching the film, I was watching it from an educator's perspective. I was looking at how the information was presented. Was it in a non-biased way?
Mm-hmm.
And I think my takeaways were that two things. Like I said, one, the impact that the big global environmental organizations that don't want to acknowledge animal agriculture's impact on the planet, and then secondly, I was blown away about the water consumption that animal agriculture consumes.
Right, because you live in California, and that's
right.
a hot issue, isn't it?
Right, and definitely that, seeing Sacramento, where some of the film was taking place in San Francisco, I'm like 40 minutes. I'm 40 minutes north of San Francisco and about 40 minutes south of Sacramento. So yeah, we have our local city water department this past summer. You can only water on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
And some of the themes that were pushed in the video are pushed locally. Whether it's have different toilets that go from 3 point whatever gallons to half of that, in different ways to conserve water. So it hit home for me, and it's an awakening as to how this issue has kind of been almost, from my perspective, almost swept under the rug.
Mm-hmm. I've seen some advertisements that were posted online in California, like one hamburger is equal to 2 months of showering. You know, cut back on meat. Have you seen any of those? They look like signs that you can see when you're driving along. I just wonder if you've ever seen anything like
Yeah.
that.
No, I mean there's more in Berkeley, Oakland area.
Mm,
There's huge emphasis on sustainability, huge emphasis on urban education in terms of sustainability. But where I'm at is kind of in the suburbs. I'm probably about 5 minutes from an Air Force base. So I probably live in a more conservative community, however you want
mm,
to define conservative, and the viewpoints aren't as open as other parts of the Bay Area. So you won't see that kind of advertisement, information, billboarding
yeah.
around here.
I think that touches on the weakest part of my whole project, which is it kind of preaching to the choir, you know? The people who are really receptive to these ideas are already thinking along these lines, and it kind of reminds me of a TED talk that I watched about a guy who he's in downtown LA, South Side LA, and he started a gardening project.
We have the Guerrilla
The
Gardener.
guerrilla gardener, that's him. You know, the people who really need this information are not necessarily the people who are getting this information. If this is just well known in a community of people who are already aware of these ideas, that's something that I'm going to look at when I'm analyzing my data. Is part of media literacy is how do different people respond to the same message, and I think that that's something important to consider as well.
Well, I think but with any change, it has to start with grassroots. So
Yeah.
even if the Guerrilla Gardener or some of these other places that are speaking to the speaking or teaching to the choir, the louder that choir
Hmm.
gets, the more that change could actually happen.
Oh, that's a good point.
And I think that's okay. And the more that choir is singing, the more that they can reach out to others. And I think others will start to hear that choir.
I'll keep that in mind. I've tried to suggest some people watch this and get feedback to have a really wide variety of perspectives. But there has been some resistance, like people who say, well, yeah, no, I don't really want to watch that. Um, so that's something that I'm going to consider as well. Um, I want to go to question number 3. Did Cowspiracy influence your attitudes, habits, behaviors? I leave the question open, but it can be about dietary habits or searching for information or anything that comes to mind.
Well, I think some of the messages I've shared with students, I've shared with colleagues in my workplace, I've shared with friends, just about the sheer volume of consumption that animal agriculture, takes up. Um, I do everything in my power to be the best human being I could be, but my daughter was actually live with me. I was attempting to be 100% vegan, and
Mm-hmm.
and and as I sit here and do this interview, I can't. I haven't been able to be fully 100% vegan. I think I care about my health. I care about the environment, but I think habit changing takes discipline and takes time. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, me too. And I mean, it was a process for me. I am vegan now, but there were stages, right? I remember trying and then giving up and then going back again. And as I'm reflecting on other people's process, I remember my own process. And something that I have discovered is people who take time to change with their own tempo tend to sustain those changes. And I have seen some people change overnight and then disappear again because
Yeah.
it takes
So
time to make sustainable changes, and everyone has their own tempo that they work at when they're adjusting their behavior and habits and lifestyle changes.
And I think the documentary just peppers the audience with of data, volume of um, results of animal agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to probably, and I guess when I say mainstream, I'm saying mainstream Americans. I know that I'm sure that you probably interview, people from all over the globe, but my perspective of mainstream Americans is very narrow centered. I like to say, and maybe this is my bias, is that mainstream America, they look at the world and everything through a straw. And I think if an audience is looking at, if they live their world through a straw, then when they see this video, it's probably overwhelming. And even for me, who I feel I don't live through a straw, it can be overwhelming in a sense of all the data, all the impact that it has.
Some of my other interviewees said it took a while to watch the whole thing, where they would go at it in pieces. For me, I watched it in a group setting, so I had no control over it, and it was interesting to see what was going on in the room. I had an idea for my project that I won't be able to do, but would be really interesting to maybe try in the future. When I was traveling in India, in Dharamsala, which is the home of the Dalai Lama in exile, one of the really important volunteer centers was a film and media studies center trying to share information about what is going on with their situation. As you know, like they used to have a country, Tibet, which isn't recognized by China. And there was a Tibetan woman from Montreal, Canada, who was a filmmaker, and she went into the community of Lhasa and secretly went into people's homes and showed them a video of the Dalai Lama talking to them in their own language, saying it's going to be okay, because they're not allowed to say his name, they're not allowed to talk about him, they're not allowed to practice their religion or do anything, or they have dire consequences. She took a huge risk in making this. And what she did is she videotaped them watching the film and showed the reaction, the very emotional reaction to what they were seeing. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to videotape people having reactions to film? So I think that would be a really cool project.
That would be good, especially if there was different types of audience. Like, can you imagine showing this video to cattle ranchers in Texas?
Yeah.
Versus a vegan community in Berkeley.
Yeah.
It would be like night and day, obviously, let alone if you intermingled those two groups.
I know.
And saw how the interaction was with a cow rancher next to, a vegan activist.
That would be amazing.
That would be kind of cool.
It's kind of beyond the scope of my ability in the next month to make that happen, but maybe in the future. I've had some ideas of projects that I want to do, after this class goes on. It's interesting how in the movie, one of the strongest speakers is an ex-cattle rancher who went vegan. Yeah.
Also, I think was that the Whole Foods exec? There was that guy was kind of interesting too. The former there's a Whole Foods executive. Was that the same guy?
No. I need to have my page open next time for the interview. Not the same guy. The guy that I'm talking about, he actually interviewed on Oprah when he started to go against his own industry.
Yeah.
He faced legal problems, and he talked about some of the dangers of talking out on this issue.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I think the Whole Foods exec, he said, yes, a vegan diet is the best for the planet, but it's difficult to make people make that change. So I think it's important to take idealistic and realistic expectations when you're working towards making changes.
Yeah, and I think then it also goes back to even like you were talking about recording audiences. It's the audience mindset. A cattle rancher. If I'm just to stereotype a cattle rancher, their mindset is that that's my livelihood. That's some seventh generation cattle rancher. And there's that's an extreme, obviously, but is that how could that cattle rancher? I don't know. He couldn't even fathom how that cattle rancher
asking people to give up a lot. yeah, before focusing on this issue, I was more focused on the fossil fuel industry, and I come from the Texas of Canada, and most of my rich uncles and aunts gain their employment through that industry, and sometimes I have discussions about environmentalism with them, and some of them are aware of, what the impacts of fracking, and some of them, are distilled in a community where information is basically supporting that industry, and it's how can I tell my own family, well, you don't need a job, just give it up and think
Right,
about the
right.
planet? It is a very, very pressing issue, and sometimes our livelihood is having an impact on the whole globe. So, how to let people know that their behavior is not only affecting them, but without being, taking away their ability to take care of themselves at the same time. It's a very sensitive issue that I'm working with, I know.
It is.
Um, Looking at the time here, uh, so can I move on to number four? You being the educator, I'd like to focus on that now. How can Cowspiracy, this documentary, best be used as an educational tool inside or outside a classroom? And I just want to mention, as we were chatting a bit before we started recording, you brought up Carol Dewick, education pages, learning communities. You had lots of great ideas there.
Yeah, so for example, I teach basic skills developmental English, and one of the courses that I teach is called Intro to Reading and Writing. So the bulk of the class are students that enter the community college at the lowest, they test in at the lowest level that you could
Mm-hmm.
possibly test into to college level. So typically it's about 3 levels below freshman composition.
Okay.
And the major themes that we use in the curriculum, the different courses that we teach at the school, is we use Carol Dweck, and she's a psychologist professor at Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
California, and the article that she's published numerous things, but one of the articles that I use is what's called Brainology, and that actually was started from some of the basic skills educators in California that actually use this program to get remedial college students up to college level English. So Brainology talks about a fixed and growth mindset. The fixed mindset being where you do not take on challenges well, you aren't receptive to learning, you feel intelligence is learned at a certain point and there's no way you can't grow, that's it, you're
Mm-hmm.
fixed. And whereas the growth mindset is that you take on challenges, you relish setbacks, that you're able to grow, and you're able to change your ways or to accept new viewpoints. So we use that in a sense for students that have been beaten down from external factors such as child abuse, alcohol
Mm-hmm.
abuse, no positive male role models in their life. Their whole K through 12 experience in the United States has been one that they've had educators that have belittled them, or
Mm-hmm.
they were all disciplinary issues. So we use that to tell students that, hey, now that you're in college, let's shed all that and let's really open up and be open to learning, reading comprehension, and the writing process, and how challenging that is, but not to quit, not to just drop the class. Or if you can't if you can't get to school, what are you going to do? So what I see is how this video could be used, this documentary can be in that same vein,
Mm-hmm.
or I guess the same spirit of trying to get students to learn self-efficacy moves to be a college student in reading and writing skills. That this documentary could also be used through visual literacy to teach these critical thinking skills that are multifaceted, that students could learn whether they're 5th grade, 10th grade, whether they're English language learner, whether English is a foreign language, regardless of their skill set or the audience, is that this could be used to start to have individual change in your mindset.
That's
So
exactly what I'm going for. Yeah.
I think you're onto something here, and it could be used at any grade level, any subject. I mean, you could tie psychology to this. You could tie science courses to this. Obviously, English courses. I mean, child development. You know, how in child development, how do we get kids to stop craving McDonald's
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So I think it's endless the possibilities that your project can lend itself to educators.
I will be following up on that Carol Dweck point and taking a look at that research. Yeah. George, thank you so much for this interview.
You're welcome.
We should be having these with all the students in our class.
You know what? That's what I originally. Are we still recording?
Yeah, but it's okay. Yeah, I know. I think Kendall is doing a review of BB Learn, which is, the website we use. Maybe having a video chat room would really add a different dimension to our collaboration.
That's what I originally thought when becoming a student at NAU. I thought there was going to be an element where we had to Skype or have video conferencing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to me, that would be kind of fun to have a post instead of writing in on a post. Is that everybody logs in at a certain, or there's certain post times that you log into, and whoever's in the room at that time, just like a classroom.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a suggestion that we could make, and we have our own little chat groups and stuff that we've managed to form, but to have a collaborative forum group would be great.
Yeah,
just managing the technology is the hard part.
Or I think time's probably just a matter of when is a good time for people wherever they are on the globe to log in.
Yeah, maybe having alternative times because we have people in the States and Korea and Germany and Vietnam and in our class that I know of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that'd be good. I would definitely join in.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that later. I have another interview coming up soon, so I'd like to keep going, but I should wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time and your valuable insight. I really, really appreciate it. And let's have another chat soon.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, well, good luck with everything over there in sunny California.
Well, it looks like you have some sun back there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is approaching 11 a.m. on a Sunday here in the ROK, Republic of Korea.
It's about 6 o'clock on a Saturday night here in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're time travelers, George.
Yeah, it was like 69 degrees today.
Sunny. I'm Canadian. I don't know what that means. That sounds like you couldn't be alive.
No, it's nice.
69 degrees Celsius. Oh my God. Yeah, we would be boiling. We would be noodles and noodle soup. But
well, Americans got to have their own system for everything.
Yeah, when's America going to come on board with the rest of the world?
Well, America has their own perspective. I mean, America's a great place, but I don't know.
I will have to visit sometime soon.
Oh yeah, especially if you come to the Bay Area. I mean, and I think that's one of the things that impacts people making some of these personal changes. Mm-hmm. Other than going to the grocery store and buying your own food, most restaurants don't even have a vegetarian option, let alone a vegan option. But the more, like where my daughter goes to school, that's one of the things that she loves, that they have a huge selection of vegan food for vegans.
That would be nice. Well, one of the things that I've definitely learned being a vegan is you have to carve your own way. Like, for example, I go to a restaurant, I look at the menu. Sometimes I just have to have a little conversation with the waiter who talks to the chef, and people are willing to accommodate you if you're polite and explain yourself. And I like that maybe there isn't a prototype for my ideal everywhere I go, but again and again you learn to kind of make your own design. And eventually, some communities will have those things out there. My last interview was someone living in Israel, which has the biggest vegan population in the world, and it's really interesting to see how different communities have different things available. Korea, for thousands of years, was mostly vegan, and now they're huge on eating meat. You can't really find a restaurant that isn't focused on meat around
Yeah.
here. So,
I mean, mainly for around here is typically Indian and maybe some sort of Chinese
yeah.
for vegan. Those are your main options. So typically, even in my own town here, whenever I take my daughter out, that's the only place we can go to is Indian in town that
Mm,
that has a full array of vegan dishes.
options. Well, that was something else that came up in some other interviews is okay, well, if I want to go vegan, how do I do it? So that's something else that needs to be developed is helping people who are interested in making changes walk through those steps and giving them some tips. And that's how I've learned is just getting online and looking at YouTube videos and websites. And it's not like there's a special class, but the information is out there, but you have to get searching for it. So vegans tend to have pretty high media literacy skills because we're out there looking at research papers and trying to find the best facts.
And I think the biggest change is going to be the mindset. It's just how when people say, if somebody walks up to a normal American and says, I'm a vegan, the
Mm-hmm.
normal American already has this either negative connotation about that person or it's foreign to them and then they don't know how to react to it. And the first way to react to it is either insult them or crack a joke about it.
Yeah.
So I think the key in using this video and the key for visual literacy is impacting one's mindset.
Well, it toughens you up when people aren't willing to accept, your value system. And that's kind of where I'm at in my vegan journey is like, I actually met Will Tuttle. So I just sent a message to my next interview letting her know we'll be on in a couple minutes. He said that there are stages of making this change. And at first, people are in the, I don't really know what I'm doing. I need more information stage. And once you get more confident, it's like the aggressive vegan stage. And that's, a lot of people get turned off by that because people think, wow, how could everyone not be doing this when the information now seems obvious to me? Why isn't this information obvious to everyone? Why don't they just change the way that I am? And then after that, you get to a different stage where you're learning to moderate your belief systems with contrary belief systems and still kind of try to be encouraging without being too aggressive. I mean, everyone has individual approaches, but there do tend to be certain stages. Yeah, Will Tuttle was one of the feature speakers in the documentary, and he's been vegan for 20 or 30 years or something. He actually was inspired by coming to Korea and having a temple stay experience where vegan food is offered. But I digress, and my next interview should be starting right now. Why don't we schedule some more time to talk about our projects, maybe, and mention it to some other students who we know could come on board, not just to talk about mine, but also yours too, if you wish.
Yeah, I'm definitely game for any kind of communication.
Okay.
As long as the time's right. It would have to either be, for me, it's either weekends or, after like 5-6 p.m. California time.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of hard for other people too. But
maybe let's put that on the discussion board and see. After interviewing you, I think maybe I should see if there was one other student, maybe Kersey, who said that she was interested in watching it to help me with my project. So I might see if anyone else wants to interview. Yeah. So I feel very encouraged, and I've got so much good information. Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
Yep.
You're on to something good. I think it's just a matter of how you're gonna kind of get it all together and.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to put together. So.
Then, like I said, I think your discussion part and your conclusion can address a lot of these future projects or ideas for people to ponder, whether they're an educator or not an educator.
Yeah. As long as I can keep it clear and cohesive, I think will be the key point. So It's hard to say goodbye to George. He's very charming, but I must. So I'll be talking to you really soon. Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck with the rest of your interviews today.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, talk to you later.
Yep.